Right.
So that's the first thing that he gave us. And then he gave us the hallucination poem. Was like he finally got into the studio to make a real recording, because before it was like cell phone recordings.
Right.
And he was like, okay, here's the poem. I recorded it for you. Oh, and I tossed another something on the end there. Maybe you'll like it.
Like it.
Yeah. And that was the hallucination poem.
Wow.
And when we heard that, it was just like, boom, this is it. This is us.
Welcome back to Innersleeve on SoundMojo. I'm your host, Cassius Morris. It's episode number 27 of the podcast, joined by the usual suspects here on the line, Frank Pavan, Joe Pacheco. What's up, guys?
Awesome day again, as always.
Hey, it's Thursday, then tomorrow's Friday, then we're looking forward to the weekend, so it's always a good time. Cassius, quick question off the top. Are you going for the Harry Potter look? Or what's
this means I'm the chosen one, especially for this podcast, and the straight cut is the podcaster's cut. No.
So how'd that happen?
How'd it happen? Actually, so you know when you clip the sunglasses on the front of the shirt?
Yeah.
Took the shirt off with the sunglasses clipped and just sliced right up. And I was like, that's a rookie mistake. It is, but we try to survive. Maybe, by the way, we're about to hit the 22K subscribers. If we hit 22K subs, we can hire a hair and makeup team. So folks, we may or may not have hit it depending on the date that you're seeing this. But no, really, we just wanted to throw that in also off the top. Thank you guys for helping us. We're just about at 22K. I know it means a lot to me.
Means a lot to me too.
Yeah, for sure. It's growing. We're happy to see the growth of the channel, and we're happy to keep doing this on a weekly basis. Subscribe to the show, hit that little bell icon, follow over on the audio platforms. We're always there, right? Same shows, just on the audio platforms, and that's it. We're gonna grow 1 week at a time, one episode at a time.
Yeah, I can't believe we're at 27 already. Like 27.
It's crazy. It feels like we were just making the concept for this, and now we're off and running. And you know, it's really good at least that we have a very unique guest on every single episode to keep things fun. And this week is no exception. We're joined by the Halluci Nation, one of the definitely most important groups, I would say, to come out of Canada probably in the last decade, formerly known as A Tribe Called Red. I don't know. Did you guys know them as A Tribe Called Red, or did you become familiar with Halluci Nation?
I'm more familiar with that name, A Tribe Called Red. I feel like I've heard that tossed around. Yeah. So when we were speaking about, you know, getting the Halluci Nation on the show, and then we chat in our little chat saying, oh, they were formerly A Tribe Called Red. I'm like, oh, okay, I've heard that. Cool. Yeah. Awesome. Yeah.
Yeah,
it's really calm, down to earth dudes, man. I loved the chat between you guys. It was like they're like very warm people. You could tell. They just are super passionate about the product they offer. Very calming voices. And I feel like, you know, even if you just take a second to go over to their YouTube channel, you can see how much they like unify Indigenous nations all across the globe. You see comments like, oh, I'm from California, a part of this nation, and I want to see you guys perform. Like, it's not only, you know, stuck to where they're from in Canada. It's like they've reached an immense amount of Indigenous nations, and also just everyday fans as well. So.
Yeah, and just to second that, I love the fact that they created that community. They created their own community, you know, because like no one was going to do it for them, right? So, and the fact that it happened so organically, just like happy-go-lucky almost, which is kind of, you know, see how they're just calming and like, let's go where the river leads us, right? And so far it's been good to them, you know?
It is interesting when you see that. I mean, you know, we get into it in this interview. I'm not going to spoil it, but they started off doing smaller shows, really made their mark doing smaller shows. And if you don't know, their music is sort of EDM DJ music mixed with traditional Indigenous music, mixed with hip hop. So, you know, for a SoundMojo viewer, this is probably the perfect group because it's so eclectic. It's such a mixing pot of so many different types of music. But you're right, Frank, just two really cool guys, you know, guys that definitely... It seems to me that they put thought into what they say before they say it. Like these don't seem like the guys that are just firing off statements and stuff. They seem very methodical, if you will, about their delivery.
Yeah, and just very passionate is what first comes to mind, but also just like aware. Like they look at things differently. You know, like I was watching a video. And they take photos, headshots of all, like, or I don't know if it's all, but at least a lot of their fans who come to their live shows, and they like project it on the screen. So it's not, they said like it's not only fans coming to their concert, but it's like they're showing off their community. You know what I mean? It's a different spin. It's nice though. It's really welcoming.
Interesting. That's a nice little tidbit from their shows. I actually haven't got to see them live, but hopefully with these shows being announced, we can see them. We have some stuff maybe coming down the pipeline in regards to that, but we won't jump ahead. We did want to jump into one topic before we give you this interview with the Halluci Nation. Sort of a funny eyebrow raiser from the world of classic rock. Roger Waters, of course, the brain behind Pink Floyd, you know, the guy behind most of the Wall, etc. He is unhappy with Mark Zuckerberg, of course, owner of Facebook, now owner of Instagram. What happened was Instagram reached out to try to use one of Pink Floyd's songs, to be specific, Another Brick in the Wall Part 2, for what Roger Waters described as a, quote, huge amount of money. Which, guys, I mean, imagine how much Instagram would pay for a song. It couldn't have been cheap.
No,
yeah,
for sure.
Especially that song, Another Brick in the Wall. It's iconic, you know. So it's like it almost brings as much to the brand as the brand would help Pink Floyd connect with a younger audience, kind of thing. But I don't know. For me, it's like it's classic Roger Waters, you know, like middle finger up to establishment. And in a way, thank God we have some of those people, because you know, it's kind of cool that you said, like, hey, I'm not just all about money. Not that he's probably crying for money. You know what I mean? It's like
that probably helps, but nonetheless,
it's like $200-300 to go see one of his shows. You know, but like everybody that's gone to see one of his shows is just like the best show they've ever seen. So
I like the lead to the article that we read from Loudwire, written by Chad Childers of Loudwire. He says the brick won't be going on that wall, according to Roger Waters. But it's like, yeah, it's almost like it's like very personal. It seemed like from some of the quotes and
he used
that he left.
He used another platform, another event that he was was the Free Julian Assange wiki, the WikiLeaks founder, and he used that platform to just like middle finger, you know. And I thought it was a little aggressive, you know, a little. Come on, you know. I agree. Written back and said thanks, but no thanks. You know, I mean, but
it's a classic case of old school versus new school. He doesn't want that new school young kid, Mark Zuckerberg, coming in and swooping everything because they're Facebook.
Well, he said his reasons were because, like, you guys just want to take over everything, and he kind of like wants to put a spoke in his wheels. You know, like, hey,
it's insane though.
I wonder what the amount was, because I know I would have said yes.
Yeah, seriously. We'll get that out of the way.
In my current situation, I would have said hell yeah.
But, Facebook knows where to get their song now. They don't need Roger Waters anymore. They got you. No, but really, it's so crazy to think, though. Strange marketing on Instagram's part. Like, what exactly do we think they would be using that song for? And the other part is, like, if schooling was what that song was about and that establishment was what it was against, this is like that on steroids. Like, Facebook is the establishment of the world, essentially. So why they would want to use an anti-establishment song, it just seems backwards to me. I don't know.
Maybe they're trying to make a statement, try to prove a point through like symbolic means, but
hey guys, we're one of you. We're not one of the big, we're not the man. But yeah, you mentioned that
make us an offer.
Exactly.
Make us an offer.
You mentioned that they said that Roger Waters was speaking at the Assange event. He had the crowd going crazy. He said quote, the answer is fuck you. No effing way. And just the actual quote that was from Roger Waters before we move into the interview. I only mention that because it's, like Joe said, the insidious movement of them trying to take over absolutely everything. So those of us who do have any power, and I do have a little bit in terms of the control of the publishing of my songs, I do anyway. So I will not be a party to this bullshit, Zuckerberg. That is the official quote from the man himself. Pretty
strong.
Yeah, like man, he's fired up.
Classic Roger Waters.
Classic Waters, man. Listen, we at the end of the day, that's why we love him, right? We can't pick and choose when we want someone to be anti-establishment. We just got to take it at face value. So I guess we'll get into this interview with the Halluci Nation, man. You know, honestly, I'm really happy that we had these guys on the show. I want to thank them for coming on, and thank them for bringing awareness to, you know, the original culture of this country and something that I think is really important. So without further ado, we'll let you guys get into that. Enjoy.
That we recognize ourselves as human beings because that's the reality of who we are.
an exciting time for you guys. Lots of change going on with the project, with the group.
Yeah, no, this is definitely a big time for us right now. We're, just renamed ourselves just ahead of putting out a new album. So yeah, coming back to life in a sense.
Totally. Talk to me about this renaming, because obviously anybody who's followed your work is familiar with the term, the Halluci Nation. But I'm just curious, what really drove you guys to sort of present yourself under this name? What was really the driving factor behind that?
I guess the easiest thing to say is that, we've grown, and that this is, we're at a point in our career where, a lot of it has to do with the pandemic, and being at a point in our career where we have finally were forced to stop. We have been going for over 10 years, like hard, touring 8-10 months of the year. And then, yeah, we were very like nose down, let's do this work, and, next thing you know, you're like 10-12 years down the road with that. And we finally had to stop and got a chance to evaluate and look at that last, period of our lives that we've been promoting this work. And in that, there's that weird, like, byproduct, I guess, for touring artists like ourselves, where when you're forced to finally stop and be at home and be with family, sleep in your own bed every night, eat home cooked food, like that, you realize how much of an effect that road life had on your being and your spirit. So there was a lot of getting back in touch with ourselves, centering ourselves, getting back in touch with our relationship together. And out of that came a lot of work. Like, we have an incredible amount of new work that we've been waiting to put out into the world. And, looking at the new work we were doing, we were really starting to find a different space within the Pow Wow music that we've been using. We've been working really closely with a lot of different drum groups and recording them and working with them in the studio in a more collaborative way, as well as with other artists, and just finding a new direction for the project that we've been working on all these years. But through that conversation, what we discovered between Tim and I was that we couldn't move on without paying some respect to what got us here. And when we talk about like what started Tribe, that was the electric powwow parties and that club night, which was a staple of ours for almost a decade.
What can you tell us about that for people who aren't familiar with that part of the scene?
Yeah. Well, it started in 2007 at a club called Babylon here in Ottawa. And other than being a regular club night, it had just happened to be all native DJs that we came together, and we aimed the party at our community. So we postered, still back in the day of posters and Facebook groups.
Right.
And, posted around the Native Students Association at the universities and the friendship centers in town. And we'd have the events. The first electric powwow was when the powwow was the actual powwow was happening in Ottawa.
Right. Okay.
So it's really something that we were sending towards our community.
Absolutely.
And the reaction right from the first night was that we had created a space within Ottawa for young Indigenous people to come and gather, and that was something that people wanted and that felt was necessary.
No doubt. Toolman, I know that you were sort of in the scene. You actually had attended some of these shows as an audience member. Is this correct, or was this later on in the group's progression?
No, I've been to I went to a show when they were probably about maybe their first or second year into it.
Gotcha.
And, and then it was in its infancy of what they were doing. So it was just great just seeing like talented guys on stage, like just, shutting the house down, from just, I guess, excellence, I guess. It was really cool. But it wasn't until about a year before I joined the group, we met up in Winnipeg. I was living there at the time, and they came and did a show there. And I got to see like Winnipeg is pretty much like an urban reserve, there's the population there is humongous. And it was their crowd that night, and they came there, and I was just sitting in the back, kind of like I holding the wall up, you know, with some people, and I was just kind of watching, and I just saw that. I knew right then and there like how important it was to do this kind of stuff, like, you know, this safe space that was happening there. It was really important, and it became really, really obvious to me. So at the time, we were just talking about working together, and I think we had our first session like the day after. And this is just like, they just brought me in as someone that was gonna collaborate with, and and then I just kind of, we had a great relationship from that week on.
It was a natural progression.
Yeah, it's like you meet somebody, you hear about them, you meet them, and then you get to really spend time. Like, that's the other thing. I spent all week with them, and it was just like, I want to hang out with these guys. These guys we're very like-minded, and like, you know, similar goals. I was in the hip hop scene at the time. They're in the electronic scene, so we're in two different scenes, but kind of together. And it wasn't no work it wasn't difficult to get on that same wavelength, because we were already there. Yeah. And the greatest thing about what me and Bear have done, like, that was since then, that day, you know, we really got to hang out. And then to not fast forward to now, where we have nothing but worked on our relationship throughout the groups, since I've been in it, since I wasn't in it, you know, and like, it's been a nice progression.
Absolutely. Is the dynamic a lot different, just the two of you guys? Like, is there been an opportunity to really get closer and more intimate of a relationship, and sort of how has that affected the work?
Massively affected. And again, that's also a product of us having the time, you know, the time on the road. Again, you know, you're going from hotel to airport to venue, and, you know, you don't spend as much time together. You're sleeping most of the time that you could be spending time together, you know? So it was like, we were having these recording sessions where sometimes, you know, we talk for 5 hours and, you know, make music for 2. Right. I stumbled there almost to say work for 2, but that talking was part of the work, you know? And now that's part of our process now. We've developed a process together that starts with talking, starts with, you know, what have you been up to? How you been doing? You know, and like get all that kind of stuff out first. You know, what have you been listening to? What have you been watching? What games are you playing?
So even if you stray a little bit, you're still working, essentially.
Because that you know, that having that strong friendship and that connection, and being more than just collaborators, being part of each other's lives, being family. And not having those words just be words, right? Like this is my fam kind of thing. Like this, you know, this is my family. This is my brother. Like, we are connected like that. It's not something, like I said, you say the words a lot, but rarely do you really get the chance to dig into something together and become part of each other's lives in a meaningful way.
And because of that, we discover a lot of new things together, and trying a lot of new things together. Like, prior to this, to what me and Bear have, it was, I think, a lot of individual people kind of putting their own, you know, their own weight into, or you know, doing their own work and kind of making the thing work. And over time, you know, like, it just kind of, it got to more where, you know, we were both equally doing stuff at the same time, and it feels more like we're accomplishing a lot more, and we're able to reach higher, and we're able to dig in creatively deeper, and and it helps that, you know, we're kind of, even though we're close, but we're two different people, and, you know, we feel music both differently, but understand each other. It's because, like, you know, we started our relationship based off respect, and then it grew to a relationship friendship.
Also wasn't a business relationship necessarily right from the go, which I think is important too, because if you have that quality personal connection, it can be a lot easier to maybe blossom it into a working relationship, which it seems like you guys have managed that really cohesive balance.
Yeah, I mean, trust, right? Like the more you build trust, it affects everything on every level.
Absolutely. You know, one thing I was wondering with you guys, because obviously I've digged into a lot of your interviews and listened to a lot of your music. Do you ever feel like almost typecast in a way when you're going into an interview to say, okay, now I'm going to have to talk about Indigenous issues and sort of be a spokesperson for Indigenous people? Or is it the flip side where you're doing this music from a passionate place and you're looking to get on these platforms to talk about these issues? Is there either one of those things?
I don't think it's either just one or the other. I think, those things happen at the same time quite often.
Interesting.
We found ourselves in this position. We didn't start this group to be an Indigenous voice in, we didn't, that's not what we came out to do. We came out to throw parties. That was right. That was our entire goal. But we threw parties for Indigenous community. So that in itself makes it inherently a political act.
Wow.
And that's something that the media, I think, connected with right away with us. And that we got asked those questions right away. And right out the gate, we had to make a decision of, okay, are we going to stand for something here, or are we just going to try to be party rocking DJs?
Wow.
And it's like, well, we were getting attention because we brought our culture into our music. Like we had a following in our community. We had a following in our city. People loved coming to our parties, but it wasn't until we started putting Pow Wow music in our music that people, all over started to pick up on what we were doing.
Interesting.
So since that's what was bringing the attention, it's an instant responsibility to represent our culture on every level. We can't just cherry pick which parts of it we get.
Absolutely. That's really fascinating though, because it was almost more on your shoulders than you had anticipated, but you were prepared for that. Is that fair, Toolman? I don't know how you feel about this.
Yeah, no, for sure. It's kind of like, I especially with me joining the group, going into like where, they have found their footing, and I joined the group like almost 7 years ago now. And it was a learning process. Although a lot of the ideals and things that were being said are inherently like I've been practicing them my whole life. So it's like, it's fine. But like, it was just being that extra voice in the group that was saying something different, but still on task and just finding moments to do it. But it's our like if we got an opportunity to use our voice for something, like shedding light on something, that we're gonna use it. And we listen to our community a lot. Like we take advice from them. We have conversations with them. We give back all, like, as much as we possibly can. And just having that connection with them. And they kind of give us the leads on like what we should talk about or where we should go. And we use our own judgment as well. Like we just bounce things back with each other. Talk to the people that mean to us in our respective communities, and then come out with some sort of answer that we can, an action that we can do.
I respect that a lot, because it seems to me like so many movements, first of all, they're started off as movements, often by corporations. So it's not genuine from the jump, but also it's not people talking from their own perspective, their own life and upbringing. It's often people talking on behalf of other people's life perspective. So I really appreciate that with you guys, that you are communicating with your community, talking about your community from your own perspective. I mean, and Bear, you mentioned that just having Indigenous art in your work made it almost politically a statement in a way in Canada. I mean, isn't that a fascinating sort of ironic thing, being that this is our country's, origin?
Yeah, I mean,
it's pretty strange.
It's strange, but it's also not surprising and not accidental. The fact that our histories aren't taught in school, our real histories, that's not a mistake.
No.
And the place we found ourselves in, you know, when we were like, okay, we have to represent, we have to be responsible to our communities and you know, talk about things that don't get enough light in Canada and all. You know, when we were finding ourselves in the middle of all of that, one question we got asked in the media all the time is like, what's the most important issue to Indigenous people in Canada? And it's like, how do you come up with an answer to that?
With one answer, right? There's a lot of issues.
We're talking about hundreds of communities across one of the biggest land masses in the world.
Right. They're not all the same people or in the same situation either.
Exactly. So how can you possibly have an answer to that? So it was something we had to sit down and really talk about. And we decided that there was, you know, rather than trying to talk about different issues every day or like the whole gamut of issues, that we would focus on something that us as artists, as musicians, as people who are in the media taking up space, what can we affect the most just by what inherently through what we do? And that's how we're seen. You know, because there's a long history of Indigenous people not being in control of their own image. And that goes all the way back to portrait painting and photography throughout film.
This goes way back.
All the way back. And us having control of our own image is a very, very new thing. You know, having filmmakers like Jeff Barnaby, you know, his film just won 7 awards, I think, at the Canadian Film Awards or Screen.
Massive.
Yeah. So, like, you know, you got Rutherford Falls happening, which we were such fortunate to be a part of. Television show run by an Indigenous showrunner, Indigenous writers. Like, these are really new things for us to have. And so really early on, we decided that that's where we could be the most effective, was to show ourselves the way that we see ourselves, that we want to be seen.
Yes. Be the people that you never got the chance to see on TV quite yet. You want to put yourself in that position.
Exactly.
Which is a super meaningful thing, you know. On a personal anecdote, and maybe people look at me sideways in the audience for saying this, but last night, you know, Drake winning Artist of the Decade for Canada, you know, being the closest person to my ethnic background, given I'm not Jewish, to see that on the screen had a big impact on me. And I've often downplayed that, to see people who sort of represent you up there. But when I actually saw it myself, it really affected me. So again, I think that's a big thing. And, you know, I kind of want to ask, since we're on the topic, and we'll get into the music in a moment, but what are you guys' thoughts on Canada's sort of relationship with racism in general? Because when you look at the way Canada is viewed, the nice guys, the tolerant guys, the people who don't discriminate, people who live here seem to feel quite different, especially Indigenous folks and people of color. You know, do you feel like it is a misrepresentation that Canada is not racist? And what are your thoughts on the view of our country and the worldview, so to speak, on that?
It's a tough one. Well,
it's a tough one.
It's one of the most ridiculous misconceptions of Canada. And I think there's a certain kind of racism that exists in Canada that allows Canada to have that vision of itself. And it's a very polite racism.
Yes. Yes. See, this is what we've been digging into. I've been talking to a lot of artists and they've said the same thing.
Yeah. It's not overt. It's not in your face, but it's there.
Wow.
And
do you, because I remember I watched you guys on CBC and you were sort of having a debate amongst the group about social media and how this is sort of affected everything really in terms of people being I mean, I see on TikTok a lot of Indigenous people showing what life is like for them in their communities that, as you guys talk about, we often wouldn't see. Do you feel like that's helping representation?
Yeah. I mean, like, it's anytime that you can, it's really cool seeing people from my community on TikTok, you know, doing things that I've saw all my life. And it's like, it's hilarious to me, or it's like insightful to me. But, what I love about it is watching. I'm really fascinated with the dancers.
Yes,
like watching, because a lot of people use our music in TikTok as well.
Mm-hmm.
So we get, even though we're not like crazy active on the platform, we do see all of it, and it's really awesome seeing people connecting with it, but also like taking the ideas of what we were doing and flipping it as well, like power dancing over contemporary music or club music, you know, like we're seeing that in the videos as well.
That's huge. No, I love that. The new track is called Remember One, featuring John Trudel and Black Bear. Obviously John Trudel, very integral with you guys. Just a little bit more, maybe if you could go back on him and explain his role in the group.
Yeah. Well, John was one of those dream collaborators. Like when we wrote a list of people we'd love to collaborate with, he was there from the first time we ever talked about it. Because he's somebody who we've all grown up knowing his work and his contributions. And so there was like, it was also a tangible kind of dream collaborator because, we are in the same orbit as each other. And we started to hear rumors here and there that he was aware of our music and he wanted to meet us. And, there was a lot of offers of phone numbers and connections happening, but it was never it never worked out quite right until we were in Santa Fe, New Mexico for the Indian market performing. And it's actually at the beginning of the video is a video I took from that night, the first time we met. And right from the first moment we met, it was like, he was just, let's do something together. He pulled out a notebook and was just like, if I gave you this poem, would you want to do something with that? Like,
wow, ready to work.
Started the idea. Yeah. And from then on, every time we got to spend time with him, it was just like this download of information. Like he saw something in us that I guess he felt he could pass something on to.
Totally.
One of the first things that he ever told me was that we had intuitively done what it took him half his life to get to.
Wow, that's huge.
Using music as a vehicle for our story. So he gave us so much, but what made it into the album, what has really changed our trajectory was the poem "We Are the Hallucination." Which kind of gave us this storyline to follow.
And he gave it as an afterthought
Did he?
as well.
That's true. He wrote another poem called A Tribe Called. Whoa! I just realized that.
You just remembered one?
No. So, okay. The first poem that John wrote us and that we were working with was called A Tribe Called Red. And it's really heavy and it's really like dark. It's almost like the dark flip to the hallucination.
The other side of it. Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
So that's the first thing that he gave us. And then he gave us the hallucination poem was like, he finally got into the studio to make a real recording before it was like cell phone recordings.
Right.
And he was like, okay, here's the poem. I recorded it for you. Oh, and I tossed another something on the end there. Maybe you'll like it.
Like it.
Yeah. And that was the hallucination poem.
Wow.
And when we heard that, it was just like, boom, this is it. This is us. And we moved with it really, really quickly. We decided it was going to be the title track on the album. We got the artist who had done our first album artwork to make us the seal of the hallucination.
Okay, nice.
It became a really real thing for us very quickly. And I realized I hadn't told John yet. And I was like, oh, maybe this, was this his plan for the hallucination? That ran with it so hard. Maybe I should ask him. So I sent him an email and I'm just like, look, this is what we're doing. Here's a photograph of the patch. And he just wrote back, the hallucination is real.
Wow. So he was just ready for this. Like he was on board from the get-go.
But I'm so excited about it in this moment. And this always happens to us in interviews when we start talking about this stuff, we realize things that we hadn't realized before.
Right.
John gave us a poem called A Tribe Called Red, and he gave us a poem called The Hallucination. And the Tribe Called Red one was dark and heavy, and the Hallucination one was uplifting and full of like love and light. And it took us 5 years to realize that he was leading us to the hallucination the whole time.
Wow. And look where you are now. It's a natural progression.
He path out.
And he
wow.
In a poem in 2014, or not even a poem, an introduction that he did in 2014 to introduce Tribe coming to stage, ended up being on Remember 01. You know what I mean? So like it's pretty crazy. Also, like anything that John's a part of that we've done, even for the last album that we did, I credit him for being such like he gave us like we've been making music for the past 2 years prior to that when I first joined, or 3 years when I first joined, to we scrapped the whole album to make a new one since I was in it. And we had the album kind of in a good place, but when we got that poem, it gave it like a path. It
just flicked the switch almost.
Yeah, and then like it also made us like take really delicate and try to make it the best thing we've ever done and what fits whatever it is that John was saying. So with Remember 01, it feels the exact same way. Like the soul chords and the anthemic drums and like that, but that whole beginning piece of just enable for him to narrate that and our future basically that he was talking about, 7 years ago.
Man, such a trip. Cool. It really is. It's insane to think about. I mean, what can people expect in terms of the rest of the material? Because I know you guys probably have a powerhouse of a record ready to drop pretty soon.
Yeah, so this will bring us back around to the beginning. So I was explaining about the Electric Pow Wow parties.
Yes.
And there was an abrupt end to the Electric Pow Wow parties, and we never got to have a last one. So that's where the title of the album comes from, One More Saturday Night. The Electric Pow Wow parties were the second Saturday night of every month.
Nice, okay. So it's back now. This is the reincarnation of the final one.
A trip. Well, that's what it was going to be. It was. Right. We were going to go out and we were going to do a tour of like, dark, funky clubs like we came up in, and it was going to be. We were going to be playing like 200-300 people rooms. We were only going to be able to advertise it, posters, and like just go kind of rebuild that era and have a nostalgic run to kind of give it a final send off. With the idea being that we were closing that cycle so that we could move on to the things that we want to do. Halluci Nation now, the new direction. Then the pandemic happened and we weren't able to do this little club tour that we wanted to do. So we really had to kind of try to find a way to reinvent the story around the album.
Yeah.
So it is still very much about that feeling of the Electric Pow Wow and looking at it. And it's I guess a love letter to that time.
I like that.
While also being the warm up to what's to come. So it's really this idea of closing the cycle and being able to move on now. So there's songs on it that are like tribe songs to the core, and there's songs on it that are the Halluci Nation taking off and starting to show where we're going to take this thing next.
Yeah, man, so a lot of foreshadowing. We got a little foreshadowing in there.
Totally. I mean, it sounds like there's a couple layers of it. I mean, and it's going to be so exciting. Real quick, before we wrap up, obviously WatchMojo is well known for our top 10 lists. We, do them for quite a while now. We have a top 10 list here for the top festival cities in the world. But before I bring that up, I'm wondering, what's the favorite festival or concert city that you guys have performed in, if you can think of it off the top of your head?
Let me think. Yeah, that's hard.
And it could be a couple if it's more than one, because it's so tough.
There's a couple just monumental moments, like when we played sometime like a festival though. No festival. I would Shambhala in by Nelson, BC. That was a really fun trip. That was like it was big for me because it was in my first year of playing, and it was in that summer, and we played like Fractal Force, which is this amazing forest stage, and just seeing that, experiencing that for the first time, and being in like like festivals don't really do that kind of style anymore. It's very niche-y, kind of like very specific. It was really cool.
My diplomatic answer to this question is always the last place that we played.
The last place we played is the best. Yeah, that's true. Best crowd on the whole tour. I like that answer. The top 5 that we have listed by WatchMojo are Austin, USA, Munich, Germany, Rio de Janeiro, Brazil, New Orleans, USA, and Montreal, Canada. So shout out to Canada there.
Those are really good ones. I absolutely love that Munich is on that list.
Yes.
Like that's an awesome city to play in. And you'd expect Berlin or something to be on there. So to see Munich, just that speaks volumes to that list.
Yeah. Whoever made this list has a good understanding, I think, of it.
Yeah. Shout out Schlachtoff Bronx. Yeah.
Hey, there we go.
That's our fam in that city.
Beautiful. I love that. So guys, it's obviously really exciting. Anything else that you're looking forward to really other than the record, post-pandemic things opening up? What are you looking forward to jumping into next?
We're working on, Rutherford was our first foray into TV show scoring, but now we're working on a movie score right now.
Wow.
Yeah, it's gonna be cool. We're seeing what 2022 looks like as far as touring goes.
They're booking shows for us again.
Yeah.
Nice. Let's hope they stay. I mean, pray to God I get to see you guys. You guys get to get out there. That's all we need. Well, listen, gentlemen, thank you so much for your time. And I encourage everybody to go check out the new album and the new video, everything that's coming out, the description below. Shout out to Halluci Nation for taking the time to come on the show, man. That was a really fun chat, I gotta say.
Yeah, very cool, man. I just like the biggest takeaway from me is like how they there's a lot of takeaways from there, but the biggest one was like where they talk about the fact that they incorporated talking as part of their song creation process. Mm-hmm. You know, because those discussions, I know like from, before a jam, you're always yapping, talking with your friend, the guitar player, hey, what'd you do this week? Da, da, da. And then you start jamming. Then at the end, you always hang out, talk about more stuff. So it becomes a family. It becomes like you said, being a part of each other's lives. So the music comes across even more authentic because it was part of a conversation, like, oh, we spoke about this, and then it ended up becoming a song, I thought that was really nice.
It's so true. It really stood out to me also the way that they really want to actually connect with people. Like their goal was never to sort of use raising awareness for things as a stepping stone to sort of get famous or whatever. It's just, everything that they're doing is genuine. And it's also just happened to propel them to a level of success. So I think it's very rare that you see people who find those two things, being genuine and finding success. So it's really refreshing in my mind.
Well said.
And like political, like everything, like you said, the media made everything political, right? So everything they do is political. So it's like a double-edged sword all the time. You have a great message, but then you also have the whole political aspect. But more power to them.
Yeah, I'm a fan.
Show. That part was honestly eye-opening to say like, just because we were doing indigenous music, it made it political. So it's like, that's such a strange thing, So hopefully this will give people, it definitely gave me some time to reflect on sort of the world around us and tied into the music business. And really happy that we did this. And we also have another special guest. These shows are just getting more and more jam-packed, guys. I mean, this is crazy.
Who's booking all this stuff? Jeez.
I know. Who's booking all this stuff, Frank? It's unbelievable. But we're joined with a SoundMojo artist for the second portion of this program. His name is Kaze4letters, like kamikaze. He's going to explain the name in just a minute. But if you want to check out more of his music after this podcast, go to the SoundMojo YouTube channel. And he's got multiple videos up there, one of our very own. And we're not going to hold you any longer.
I'm standing at the crossroads, see the devil wanna buy my soul. I was gambling at the juke joint, lost every single thing I own.
We're back on Innersleeve with another special guest. I don't know how we get all these guests coming on, Joe. This man Joe's working his magic over here. The one and only Kaze4letters in the building. What's happening?
Hey, what's going on, y'all? Pleasure to be here on Innersleeve, man. Thanks for having me.
Man, it's great to have you on the show. For the people who are familiar with our channel, they've probably seen your music video here on SoundMojo. And I know, Joe, you were involved in getting that on the channel. So you guys have had some prior communication before this.
Yeah, this is a total pleasure to actually see Kevin in person, sort of, But we've been emails back and forth. I heard his stuff through Dope Cause We Said website. Carlton turned me on to him, and I'm like, I gotta get this guy right away, man. This is like, I just love his stuff. I'm like, I love the whole, the chill vibe on some of the songs, and like some approaches is a little more poppy, and then like the messages behind it. I also did some digging and see all the stuff this guy's done, like in terms of just like for his community, and for like all the stuff he's done. It's fantastic. So I'm like, yeah, I got to get this guy on the show for sure.
One of Carolina's finest joining us today. Absolutely.
Yeah. Shouts out to everybody in Canada. You know what I mean? All of y'all.
Absolutely.
But yeah, thanks for having me, y'all. Because coming into this, putting this project out as an independent, every outlet that I can touch matters. And so this is big to be on SoundMojo with y'all and Innersleeve.
Well, absolutely, man. We're really happy to have you. So Kaze, what does Kaze mean? Just for lack of a better way to phrase the question. And is the 4 letters, is that because it's Kaze, or is there a different twist to that?
So, yeah. So that goes back to like I say, Fisher Price, my first rap name. You know, every rapper has their first rap name that they got from freestyling or hanging around with their boys or their first rap crew. And so, I was probably around 18, 19, and I was freestyling, and I said, my name is Kev, but you can call me Kaze. Rhyme like a genius, move faster than a Maserati. And everybody, I got a react. Oh, everybody gave me that reaction. And so it was like, yo, you said Kaze. You know, my name is Kevin. And it's like kamikaze was the energy of what I said. And so we mashed it together to make this super long, hard to say rap name, Kaze, right? And so I went around and performed as that for a while. My first song on Ninth Wonder, Mr. Dream Merchant, I appear there as Kaze, and it just too long to say, and eventually got broke down to Kaze, 4 letters. Like that was what my friends would say, Kaze. And so that became part of the analogy. It's like Kaze, 4 letters. Like when you're telling somebody like, no, you don't say the whole 15, 30 letters. So yeah, organically given to me, you know, inherited, embraced by the community, but it definitely stuck. And, you know, when you look at the definition in Japanese, it means the wind. I know people associated with the Japanese pilots and you know, and that history as well. And so I was like, yo, I'm gonna rock with it. We'll go with that.
That's really cool. So I
always thought like it's like you said, organically, right? So it's always like best when it comes towards you instead of you trying to force your name on someone else kind of thing. So I find it just like it's just meant to be vibe.
I think your nickname finds you, right? Like that's true, man. I think this one kind of hit me, and because it had my name being Kevin and it had the K, and it just the way it's kind of, you know, rolls off the tongue. And I grew up a huge Nas fan. I'm super influenced by Nas. And so the Kaze, I was like, yeah, we can rock.
We're in the same neighborhood.
It had legend, sprinkles of legendary on it. So
well, that's a lot of what Nas did, you know, even with his music. When I watched this documentary talking about how he was reading about pharaohs and stuff when he was 7. So like he always wanted his own sprinkles of greatness into his stuff. So that's interesting.
Yeah,
I always love artists that like bring history into their music, you know, like from the metal side. Iron Maiden is one of those. I learned a lot of historical stuff from that band, and like, you know, from people dropping knowledge basically and like educating us, you know, instead of just always talking about like themselves and like how much money they got and all that stuff, you know. It's like I love it when people bring something to the table where it's all right, okay, let me chew on that for a bit, you know, like let me figure that out, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. Man. It's about making it more than just that base level listening experience. And speaking of listening experience, Kaze, you got a couple artists on your wall there. Can you? Yeah. I mean, is there more than what we see, or sort of maybe tell us about your musical influences and what you like?
Absolutely. I think, you know, I have worked really hard to be identified and express myself as, you know, I know people will identify with me, you know, primarily as an MC or a rapper or a hip hop artist. But I, you know, with this album, even and how I'm moving forward, I really just want to be known as well for my musicianship, and because I'm a big sum of my influences, man. A big 60s, 70s, 80s baby. You know, all of my different family members kind of put something different in my life. My dad gave me like the blues and the jazz and the John Coltrane and the Miles Davis. And then, you know, just he's from Mississippi. So I got the old Southern roots of like Robert Johnson and Muddy Waters and Little Walter and things like that. You know, early black rock and roll stuff I got from him. But then my sister's in high school, right? So I'm getting Madonna and Prince and like Run DMC and all of that from her. And then like, of course, like, you know, what you see here, Stevie Wonder, like Hall and Oates, like, if you looked around my room, you'd see Jimi Hendrix, Bob Marley, Prince, Tupac, Michael Jackson, Dolly Parton, even Aretha Franklin. And so like, I really feel like that a lot of the legends have left us a blueprint to follow, man. And just like, I think we always are looking to create some new energy from scratch. And there's a lot of like recipes that have been left behind by some legends that like, I take a teaspoon of this and a teaspoon of that, and a teaspoon of this, and then I rap over it, right? Like that's how I try to bring it into like the now. And so, yeah, absolutely. This is like my studio room, and it's like surrounded by just the musicians, the artists that touch me the most. You know, I got Phil Collins over here, Whitney's back here, we're behind Madonna, like the full spectrum. You know, I ran out of wall. If I had more wall, there'd be like 20 more legends up in here.
It's until it's full. That's the amount of legends we will have.
Yeah, that's the idea. That's the notion. Yeah,
that's what I'm talking about.
It's interesting because I look at the, you know, Stevie Wonder, Hall & Oates, Madonna, and all the others you mentioned, and that's what I guess attracted, because I'm guilty of the same thing, where it's like I grew up on Run DMC and like Beastie Boys, but I also grew up on Metallica, Ozzy Osbourne, you know, all that stuff. And you know, I've said this many times, I'm broken record here, but it's like, you know, back then people would be like, no, you can't like this and like that, you know, I'm like, why not, man? It's like, and like you said, look, I'm wearing a Led Zeppelin shirt, but all that came from Robert Johnson and all the Muddy Waters. All that stuff is just built upon foundation, right? So yeah, and that's what I got from your music. When I heard it, I'm like, oh, okay, especially like the first song I upload, I'm looking here, was you with Sonny Miles, The Ultimate.
Oh, yeah, man.
It's got such a retro vibe, 70s vibe, right? Very chill. And then, you know, Crossroads, great video on that one. And then, like, obviously, you know, I love this one, like Wake Up.
Bogdan was in his living room, they shot him in the dog. They do dirt, cover it, never see the slammer. So RIP to everyone who died off camera. My own people killing us, now cops is too. Now tell me what the fuck am I supposed to do? Come on, black people out in the streets, time to wake up. Allies down for the cause, time to wake up. Every race, color, and culture, you better wake up and work together, ain't no stopping us now.
And then you have like Did My Best, which is more poppy. So it's like you get to see all the cool colors that you bring to the music, you know? So kudos.
And I can hear, you know, it makes so much sense with what you were describing with, you know, the current stream of the high school awareness in music, or, you know, the steady stream of classic blues rock awareness. It was all sort of being channeled into you from all different sides. So it makes perfect sense how that's sort of coming out of you now. Is there, even though you do rap, do you inherently like connect more like with rap the most out of any music, or would you say you connect with another genre the most, if that makes sense?
Yeah, I would say hip hop is just kind of my core identity, because I came up making my name battling, freestyling. I was in those, you know, if, you know, and I see this similarity in other artists like Kid Rock, T-Pain, other artists that came up like rapping, like hardcore rapping, like, you know, in the clubs rapping, you know, doing their thing, and then kind of transitioned and evolved into like another version of themselves that allowed them to tap into all their musical interests. And so like, I think hip hop is at the core of who I am. And as a writer, when I think of the beat, you know, like it's going to be a touch of jazz or a touch of pop or rock, but the beat, the foundation is going to be that hip hop, like that knock, that 808, that bass that goes along with it, that kind of makes you want to move and nod your head, that you can bond to. I think that's always going to be there. But I think as a producer, you know, because I produced 7 of the records on the album, you know.
Oh, nice.
So that's an element that allows me to showcase that side of me, right? That Did My Best was me doing my New Edition, Bobby Brown kind of pop, CNC Music Factory, you know, just all this stuff, like I said, that touched me. I get to now, like, you know, program that and then rap over it, but it feels like 80s, 90s R&B, you know, and I think that's what I'm, you know, I think people find their sound or their pocket. And I think that, you know, that's a big pocket for me, is taking my influences and making them new, right? That Crossroads is a modern day Muddy Waters record, Robert Johnson record. Like if they were here now, that's what it would hopefully sound like, you know? And
I like that. If they had the current technology and the awareness also of what is happening now.
That Robert Johnson would sing his part and then he would spit a verse that was so cold and mean, you know, that would make it, you know, like today's. And so like, I think that hopefully that part of it too is like you said, for the kids that's not doing their research and they digging in, that they'll see that and go possibly dig a little element further. That's what, Public Enemy and Chuck D and KRS-One made me do when I would see them talk about things. I would go dig another element I got to find out about this, and
absolutely.
I hope that's what that does.
No question. One of the things that you conquer a lot in your music, or at least in the latest project, is sort of racism and the way that you've perceived that in the world and such. There was a story that broke in the news recently by Willow Smith, who said that she was singled out and made fun of for listening to, I think, 9 Inch Nails and My Chemical Romance, because she was told, you're black, you shouldn't be listening to that. Me being half Caribbean, I've experienced a lot of strange things in terms of that at metal concerts, people being like, oh, you like metal? And I was like, yes, that's why I'm at a Swedish metal show. My point being, has this ever happened with you? And what is sort of your thoughts on the sort of race dictated music tastes?
Yeah, absolutely, man. I think that's one of the stigmas for growth amongst our, my community, all communities that kind of try to limit or box you to what they feel like associates with the ability of what your skin can accomplish, right? Or that what you're capable of understanding or creating. And I think that it speaks to the part of what I've been trying to do with this album is we've been, I know as black artists, we've been disconnected kind of from the origin of the roots of a lot of what we've even talked about in this show already, of where rock and roll comes from and just our participation in it. You know what I mean? Even if people want to, talk about all the different ways that people that were helping create it, we're right there. There's going to be names that you can name and go through the history of the African-American, the Black contribution to rock and roll and music and popular music in the way that it's played now. And many, if not all, artists that aren't of color will tell you who their favorite Black artist was that they listened to growing up, or who they studied and learned how to play like. And it sucks now that, that there's that disconnect, that if you're a Black kid and you want to pick up a guitar and do heavy metal, that's you acting white. That's you being less Black, or you being less yourself. And that sucks. That's totally the opposite. Living Color I was so happy to see that when that came out, right?
Same.
I'm talking about something so long ago, but that's how much it impacted me. Because I was like, hell yeah, Cult of Personality, look at this shit. Like, you know what I'm saying? Oh, we can do this. Oh, we can? I didn't think that we were allowed. And so I continue to speak on hey, we have to know our roots and history, because we're hating on ourselves, part of our tradition, that is part of who we are. I wish I saw more Black kids playing rock and roll and heavy metal. It always kicks ass every time you see it. You know what I mean? Because it's usually just super angst, organic, hood shit. I love it, And so I just, speaking of what you say, yes, I've experienced that, man. Anytime I try to step out of just being seen as a Black kid that raps, I work with artists that do bluegrass and rock and roll and country as well. Like I said, I'm a musician, and so I produce. I don't think in boundaries. And so, rock and roll being one of those, it always lets me know where cats' music knowledge is when they hate on me for in rock and roll. I'm like, okay, I can't
exactly
have a high level conversation with you that I want to
have. This person is uninformed about the history of this music.
Seriously. I remember being there. I remember literally, you just mentioned Cult of Personality. I remember being in my parents' living room, I think 7th grade, and it just came on, and wow, what a sound. What a sound. Holy cow, I never heard this before. Even King's X. I don't know if you're ever familiar with King's X. Another power trio that was just wow, I never heard this sound. So they have this great blend of rock, but then these gospel vocals on top, these amazing harmonies, Beatlesque, but incredible. And also to what you said about the genres and stuff, it's interesting, because today we're also in a unique time where because everybody's sort of the labels and the radio made you fit into a box, right? Okay, here's rock, here's whatever, right? Pop. Whereas today, I see it with my kids, right? My kids listen to an Arabian trap song on repeat while he's gaming, and like and then like I'll play him some heavy stuff, and then I'll play him some like West Montgomery because I have some nice old vinyls. I love that stuff, so I put it on. They're like, "What's that?" I'm like, "Oh, that's jazz." What's jazz? Okay, jazz is this.
They'll appreciate that later, Joe. They'll appreciate it later.
Yes,
absolutely.
Exactly.
It's amazing.
That's what like when you see K-pop just blazing over everybody. Like, and like, like my daughter too, almost like not fluent, but like understands Japanese, reads Japanese and like all that stuff. So it's like,
wow,
I think we're okay. I think we'll be okay. And in the big scheme of things, I think like the whole, it'll all just be like music at one point, hopefully. Right.
Yeah.
That's a great idea.
Yeah. Sorry, bro. Yeah. I was going to say, I always find a group where anytime I get worried, it never fails that I'll run into a group that will like reassure me or artists that'll reassure me. And it's usually not on the, the mainstream. It's something I run into with somebody, and I'm like, okay, this guy, all right. Whew, okay. The new kids, everybody's okay. There's one or two people that, you could tell are a nod to the people that came before them. They at least have like some of that in their recipe, as I would say, and those are the kids that I always dig, like R&B, the artist Her. Like, I was like, okay, Prince, we're good, like with like a R&B songstress that can play guitar, piano, writes her own songs. Like, there's somebody of the new generation that's worth checking out for sure.
Which is so great to see, man, and it's incredible, and it's good that you're expanding, people's knowledge on this, because not everybody, knows the roots of any given genre, and maybe if you bring it up, they'll get to know it,
The thing with like the whole black with music and everything, it's not just like people think it's hip hop or R&B, soul, pop. Like there's blues, jazz. God knows.
I'm down south. Gospel's big down here.
That's it, right? So it's like it's not just one genre. It's like all genres. Everybody borrowed from that.
No, it's so true.
And to touch on, like you said, that element. I was, where I grew up originally in Northern Virginia was like kind of like a suburb. You would probably say like a place kind of like where Pharrell grew up. And so I was a black kid skateboarding as well, right? Mm-hmm. And so I was skateboarding and we're listening to different things, and then I get to high school, I'm listening to Rage Against the Machine. I'm listening to like all these things that kids might have had to catch up on, but I'm a black kid listening to that, right? It's cool now. I knew it was cool then, right? But then, you can tell from people that just ain't up on where you're at yet. And so like, yeah, man, I've always been, I thank my sister for that. Because I had an older sister that listened, she listened to Kiss. She listened to like, oh man, she had all sorts of stuff going on that I don't think that many people had. She had such a well-rounded musical palette, like, that I was a little kid just kind of blown away, sharing a room with my sister and hearing all this stuff that I probably had no business listening to.
That's always the best stuff to hear, though, especially at that age. That's the stuff that really piques your interest.
Yeah.
So as a producer, like, just walk us into like, how would you approach a song? Like, how do you normally approach writing a song? Is it like the beat first? Because I know myself being a producer as well, is like, I need the beat. I need to feel something and then I can take it from there. So just curious what your process is like.
Yeah, man. I think I got, I would say that if I'm in the mode of production, I would just kind of try to beatbox it in my head first. I'm not going to lie. I would try to have some visualization of where I might want to go. If I don't have that, I try to get inspired. And there's many ways of getting inspired, but I try to listen to like, maybe some of my favorite artists or something that I want to like, okay, I'm in I want to create something that feels, islandy or kind of has that Bob Marley vibe. Well, then I'll go listen to a bunch of Peter Tosh. I'll go listen to a bunch of Bob Marley or the Wailers or Damien Jr. Gong. I'll just kind of try to get in that mode, in that vibration,
Yep.
And then just kind of start playing with sounds, which is kind of like, on the production side, that's kind of how I think about it, but on the songwriting side, that's kind of its own little cloud. I'll maybe just kind of put some words or idea together or kind of the thought of a hook or something silly might come out of a conversation, right? Like somebody might say something like that. And I'll be, ooh, that's a song title and then work back from that, right? I try to like wrap around some type of a concept, right? And so, like I use Wake Up as an example. It was right with what was going on with the time. Every time I cut my TV on and with George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, Ahmaud Arbery, everything that went on here in the US last summer and continues to go on, it was like, this is the message in the moment, right? Black people out in the street, time to wake up. Allies down for the cause, time to wake up. Like that came right to my heart. You know what I mean? From what was going on in the moment.
In real time.
Right. That starts right in itself, Right. And I think that those songs are like the biggest blessings. The one that kind of is like, oh, nah, this is on. I can't write it fast enough. I think that's when you're in the right place. And it's not always politically motivated. Sometimes it's, but that energy, whenever that hits and it's like, okay, y'all know you'll work on something for 5 hours and probably delete it like it was trash. Sometimes you have those moments. Mm-hmm. And then you have those moments where you're like, nah, this feels right.
There's also those moments that like I find, wow, where did this come from? I'm already done, right? There's this magical moment. You're like, wow, that came through me, man. I'm just like the conduit for this song, right? This message.
That's the thing. It's intense.
Wake Up totally felt like this is for the people. God said, go do this, record it. Like that came together so fast. And then like, indie label hit me and was like, we want to press it. Like it just happened, like all these things. And I was like, that was meant to be. Like you said, that's when you're like in that right energy.
That's it. And like I'm judging by the comments we're getting on the channel, right? Like a lot of the Watch Mojo, because it's being promoted in some of the Watch Mojo top 10s, and like some of the stuff is coming back very good. Like the people are really enjoying it. So that's what it is.
They definitely are.
That's the whole mission, right? With SoundMojo, it's to help out people, talented, amazing artists, to get that spotlight that's like, always not robbed, but like, the mainstream takes it away from us. And we're trying to just shed that light. And that's great thing about Watch Mojo, to like fund this thing that's just, and then just throw it. Let's promote these guys, give these guys the spotlight instead of just like a Sony Music or, the top artist of the day, right? So kudos to Watch Mojo.
Couldn't have said it better, Joe. So Kaze, what's next for you, man? I know that you've been working like crazy.
Yeah, man. So I'm excited to get back outside as these restrictions kind of loosen up. I did a virtual performance that's going to post, coming up here locally for a Juneteenth celebration, the first annual Juneteenth here. I'm doing an outdoor festival out here as well. And so I'm looking to get back on the road as things open up and get out of town, hopefully come to Canada and do, check y'all out, go to LA, Atlanta, and just start making the rounds. And this record came out, it was released in October, and so I haven't had a chance to really get out to the people and promote it yet, and touch the people with it. So I just look forward to doing that, continuing to work on new material and dropping again this fall, and continuing to work with y'all, man, putting out, sky's the limit. I'm just trying to represent the best of what's indie in my area.
Absolutely, and you're killing it, and we really appreciate your time and coming on the show.
Appreciate y'all, man. Appreciate SoundMojo for promoting the real, and brothers like me, you know what I'm saying? Totally, and you know what I mean? And this regardless of genre, right? Because even I think that certain people that might not like hip hop will say, hey man, I don't listen to a lot of rap, but I like your stuff, and so that's what I always go for as well. For people that aren't really even like tuned into hip hop, I'm like, nah, it's music. Just check it out. You're like, y'all had some great songs, man. Like I said, I'm really impressed with y'all's lineup and appreciate, y'all putting me in that stream with those people shines bright on me. I appreciate that.
I thought I did my best. I thought I did my best, girl. Did everything you asked for. I thought I did my best.
Kaze4letters, man. Awesome.
Interesting dude, eh?
Really interesting dude. And I'm glad we got the name out of the way, because I was pronouncing it the way it was spelt, not emphasizing the E. But it's interesting to know that there's actually a backstory behind that too.
Yeah, I love his open approach to music, where it's like he's influenced. It's how his father gave him the bluesy, jazzier side. The sister got the Madonna and all the like stuff that was current at the time. And you hear it in his music, like I said in there, it's like there's some 70s vibes, and then another song has like today's vibes, right? Like so, it's great to see like that someone that's so open minded that like, but still all unique to him, right?
Yeah.
So I did not sit in on this. It was just Joe and Cassius. Joe, I guess that was your takeaway. Cassius, what was your takeaway from Kaze?
You know, my takeaway was that I think he's one of those artists that really is on, you know, I don't want to sound cliche by saying the right track, but there's no better way to say it. I mean, there's so many artists, like they have the one part down, but they don't have the marketing, or they don't have something about their look, or they don't have, you know, I think he has the full package. And that's really something that I notice about him. And also his music knowledge is really up. Like there's, you know, enjoying music, and then there's being really knowledgeable. And, you know, there's even groups on his wall that I'm not really that familiar with. You know what I mean? Even though I claim my knowledge of music. So yeah, just really a dude who this is his life. I can't really picture him doing anything else. You know, that was my takeaway.
Well said, man. That's exactly it. It looks like it's honest, like it's his life, it's his sound, and like, you know, the video quality and everything he does is top level.
Yeah.
You know, there's like no skimping on anything. And like you said, he's on par on all the social medias and stuff. So yeah, kudos to that guy.
All right.
Yeah, man. Awesome. And we definitely look forward to having more SoundMojo artists on the podcast. If you want to become a SoundMojo artist, this is an option that is potentially on the table. You can go to our YouTube channel and you can submit your music to Joe. I don't know if you're taking them.
Yeah, pretty much like every video has the submit to SoundMojo. Whether it's an artist or a music video or Innersleeve, there's in the description, there's a link that says submit to SoundMojo. So there you go.
Absolutely. You never know. You could end up right here on Innersleeve with us chatting and with your video on SoundMojo. And guys, I don't know if there were any other closing statements that you had, but I think that this was a really good jam-packed episode, if I do say so myself.
Yeah, definitely, it was awesome.
Definitely.
Absolutely.
Awesome. I enjoyed it.
And when you're at the YouTube channel, whether you're an artist that wants to sign up with us, whether you're a viewer, make sure to click that subscribe button. There's a little notification bell next to it as well. So make sure that you click that in order to get real-time, up-to-date updates with SoundMojo. We have content coming out almost every single day, so make sure not to miss that. Also, get us on social media. That's Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. We have all types of posts coming up. We have polls coming up to find out what you guys want to see and hear. That's really what it's all about. And last but not least, make sure to subscribe to us on all of our audio platforms. Apple Podcasts, Spotify, pretty much anywhere you can get your podcast, you can find us guys here at Innersleeve. So thanks so much for tuning in. We'll catch you guys next week.